as a trainer, you just watch that dysfunction in someone's movement pattern, right? All of a sudden, the foot collapses on one side and the knee loses the stability, and then it translates to the hip, and then the shoulder, and then the neck. Sometimes when we're working with these women, you can see the dysfunction from the feet all the way up to the head. The beauty is, if that is what some of your listeners are dealing with, by addressing it at the center of gravity, it has this beautiful trickle up and trickle down effect to create more stability. Then we can create more mobility and strength.
Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. Okay, get ready. Get ready for the most laughs, I promise, you have ever encountered in a conversation about pelvic floor health. My guests today, Jen Lormond and Christina Walsh, bring just a wealth of information about our pelvic floor health, and it spreads beyond that region. It can go all the way to the top of your head, down to the bottom of your toes, and we talk about so many things like how your lower back and hip pain may be a result of pelvic floor dysfunction, which is actually what drew me into that. We actually talk about manual therapy. So when I introduce Christina, you'll hear some more about that. How to know if you're suffering from overtraining, core dysfunction, other issues. I mean, all kinds of things. And let me tell you, like I said, this is a really fun episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. We guffaw. Yes. That's a word I don't think I have used on here before, but that is exactly what happens. You're going to have fun with this. You're going to have fun. Now, before I bring them on, let me tell you two things. One, let me tell you about them. Jen Lormond is an exercise physiologist, author, and mom of 3, living and thriving with stage 2 prolapse. Christina Walsh is a physical therapist specializing in integrative manual therapy and mom of 2, living with a rectocell. And I'm not sure I said that correctly, you guys. I'm sorry, but that's what she's living with. But together, they have 36 years of professional experience and have helped thousands of women stop peeing their pants, ditch back pain, and have better sex. They are published medical researchers in the Journal of Women's Health Physical Therapy, where they proved that women can heal without kegels or inserting anything into their nether regions. Now, before we get going on here, please do be advised that this episode uses anatomically correct language and also some slang language that you'll hear. And it does speak to issues surrounding intimacy. So if you have little ears and you need to protect that, then by all means do that. And one more thing, before we bring on Jen and Christina, I want to remind you of my book, Your Worthy Body, Find Freedom and Health by Breaking All the Rules. This is not a diet book. It's not a weight loss book. So if you're looking for something like that, look elsewhere. There's plenty of those. What this does is an invitation to have a different perspective about your body, your movement, your eating, and it uses exercise science and nutrition science all through a lens of faith to break some of the health and diet rules and messaging we've heard. So make sure you go grab your copy. There is a link in the show notes. Okay, let's bring on Jen and Christina. Jen and Christina, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Graced Health Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, this is great. So I was telling you right before we hit record that this is the first time I've interviewed 2 people. So you are a first on the podcast. So let's start with this. Why don't you go through, say who you are and a little bit about yourself as it relates to Tighten Your Tinkler, which I definitely want to get into that name and all of that. But that way people can identify the voices with the names.
I'm Christina Walsh. I'm a licensed physical therapist, and I also specialize in some specialized manual therapy that's very gentle to decompress and align tissues called integrative manual therapy or craniosacral therapy. And I was absolutely blessed when this woman here entered my life and we were able to join forces behind a cause that I so deeply believe in and care about.
And she's a mom of two adorable kids. I'm Jen Lormond. I'm an exercise physiologist. I'm an author. I used to own a studio, recently closed a studio, and we are both medical researchers, which we also forget to talk about.
Thank you.
And I'm a mom of 3 boys, 2 teenagers, and one that still really likes me.
That is, yes. I have 2 boys who are both teenagers, and just make sure that your Costco membership stays up to date. Because
girl. It's no joke.
It is, seriously. I mean, who was I talking with? I have a friend who has 4 kids, and I'm like, how do you feed these people? I mean, my boys are huge. They're super tall and they're athletic. They're athletes. And I mean, it's just never ending. It's never ending.
Quarantine was awful. I was having to lock food up.
I know. And I mean, no sooner did one person finish eating than someone else came in eating. And of course, we're all dispersed because we're all trying to find our own places.
Yes.
I'm at the kitchen table and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just a never ending stream of people coming in. Thankfully, they're pretty, they'll take care of themselves. But yeah, it was crazy. Well, I'm super pumped to have you guys on this podcast. I know that you have a lot of different passions, and what I really want to focus on today is back and hip pain as it relates to your pelvic floor. This is new to me. So often I will come into these interviews. I'm like, well, I kind of know, and I really want to kind of tease some of this stuff out, but I'm super excited to learn, because I hear that and I'm like, oh, okay. But first, I want to hear some about Tighten Your Tinkler, which is your website name. Did I say it right? Because
yes, totally.
What the heck is a tinkler? I mean, I think I can figure it out.
Yeah, you're probably inferring exactly the right thing.
Okay.
We have one of our clients to thank for the moniker that holds the place, our business name and our website name. We work with a bunch of women in person, many women, and doing our research before we launched an online version of what we're able to offer now. And we went to them for help when we said, we hear the call to put this online accessible to more women. We understand that that's on our hearts and we have to do this. But can you please help us figure out what to call it?
Yeah. So I will be the first to admit that I was like, we knew we needed something that fit our personalities. We're a little goofy and nerdy and quirky.
Same.
And
all of the above. Yes.
And we know that we, try to lighten this heavy topic, right? So we wanted our name to really reflect that. So I brilliantly came up with Tighten Your Twat. To which our clients were like, I don't think that's the vibe that you want to go for here.
But also appropriate. that would have worked too. Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Okay, so now that we know, I think everybody gets what we're talking about. Tinkler, twat, anything else, whatever you want to call it. I really want to dig in to some of the things. So one of the things, Jen or Christina, I'm sorry, that you mentioned is manual therapy. And I might be jumping the gun here, but when you talk about manual therapy, what exactly does that entail? Because you said something, you used the word with sacrum as the base root. Is the manual therapy externally, internally, or do you want to table that? And when we can talk about it here in a little bit, because that's a confusing term to me when you're talking about the pelvic floor.
What an excellent point you bring up. And my manual therapy is just any therapeutic approach where someone is touching you, technically. And there are so many varieties of that. One of my manual therapy practice is separate from Tighten Your Tinkler, but it is how I found this calling that I'm pursuing now here with Jen. One thing that wildly differentiates what we're able to offer women in regards to pelvic and core health is the fact that nothing is internal in anything that we do or recommend. You
no
are not
kegels.
Yes, no kegels, no penetrating your body with anything, no taking your clothes off. And most women who work with us tell us that they intuitively knew there was a better way to get to retraining and strengthening their core and pelvic floor than being recommended to penetrate their body with foreign objects. And that's how they find us, is because they're looking for something different, something external, more subconscious and natural sort of way to get all those muscles functioning optimally again. And there is a better way. And that's what we're so excited to bring to women. And we found it through our own healing experiences and journeys first.
Okay. And I got to tell you, when you say there's nothing internal, there was just like an exhale I could feel leaving my body, because there is a bit of anxiety. I mean, who among us likes going to visit our gynecologist, for our annual exam? I mean, we do it because we know it's good for our health, but I'm like, that's just so hard and awkward and all of that kind of stuff. And to hear you say, no, this is all, we can approach this from the outside in, which is often different than what we think about from a lot of different medical therapies or approaches. So I love hearing you say that. So I want people listening to realize that this is the kind of thing that we can do. And that I know that I want to talk some about your program, but that this is it's an external thing. So we don't have to take off our panties, you guys. This is great. Okay.
Yes.
Amen.
Okay. Let's talk about back and hip pain and as it relates to pelvic health. So I'm just going to kind of open the door and ask and let you all talk about that, because that is not something I had ever considered could be correlated. I mean, like, to me, I think of pelvic health and I think of peeing my pants when I sneeze or when I'm jumping on a trampoline, or, like some of the more common ones, which we can certainly discuss, but back and hip pain, tell us more about that.
You are not the only one to be initially surprised at this connection. I think we're total nerds for the anatomy. I think the most direct connection is just to explain that the pelvic floor muscles share attachments with the hip muscles and literally connect to our tailbone, which is part of our back and pelvis. So it's all one neighborhood. And one thing depends on the other to function properly.
The way that I would describe it in terms of movement is the hip and back pain is really coming from pelvic and core dysfunction. That's kind of lingo that folks are more familiar with, that core dysfunction. The system that we work with, the musculoskeletal system that we're retraining in our program, is that pelvic core system. And that means that it's the pelvic floor, the deep abdominals, the back extensors, the hip rotators, and the glutes. God designed our body for all of those muscles to work together synchronously to be able to support us just from a postural perspective. And when you start adding things like childbirth or a back injury or something that created a disruption in how that system functions, then you start having muscle imbalances.
And then you start having pain.
Yes.
And then you start having symptoms like the things people more stereotypically think of with the pelvis, the pee leaks, the incontinence, the frequency, and also the bowel pieces that can go along with that.
Okay. So this is where, with those muscular imbalances, we'll use pregnancy as an example here because it's the most relatable thing that most women experience, that is the impetus for this, is the pelvic floor gets overstretched and weak. The deep abdominals get overstretched and weak. Late stages of pregnancy, your glutes kick off. So now you're left with really two muscle systems, the back extensors and the hip rotators, that are like, okay, we got you. We're gonna go, go all in for you.
And then diaphragm tries to jump on board.
And so they can only pick up that load for so long before there's a break in the chain of that system. And that can look like sciatica. That can look like something we call dormant butt syndrome. The poor ladies that have the flat pancake booty after pregnancy and their booty never comes back.
Piriformis syndrome.
Piriformis syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Just chronic low back pain, chronic mid back tightness.
Or that feeling like a lot of women, they've had the discomfort for so long, they don't even identify it as pain anymore. They've either so deeply accepted it as just the way it is for me, or they're handicapped to not know what to do next. And so they dissociate from it and they say, no, I'm not in pain. And then we start asking about, well, how are you sleeping? Well, my back's waking me up at night, but they're not in pain. You know, to say you're in pain is
scary.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you don't know how to fix it, you don't even want to go there. And so, you know, it's that feeling of constantly needing to stretch your back, like, oh, always, all day long, I just need to bend over. And that can be what we're talking about too, even if you don't identify it as I'm hurting.
Okay. I have a lot of questions. So,
Awesome.
But you're geeky and nerdy like I am. So you
Yes.
So excited.
So, okay, when you talk about core dysfunction, some of those symptoms are the ones that you were just talking about, right? Like the piriformis syndrome, the hip pain. What is there anything else that for people to, like the constantly needing to stretch your back? Okay, so just to make sure that I was clear with that. Now, so as a personal trainer, and a lot of my community is really active. And one of the things that I have been learning, and PS, by the way, if I were to go do everything again, I would probably go the physical therapy route. Like I'm just fascinated by that. And I think it's so much more than wearing khaki pants to work every day. I love it. I love it. I would totally do that. But, you know, one of the things that I have been on a journey about learning about is how everything, just like you said, everything works together. So if you have physically active women who are suffering from piriformis syndrome and they run a lot or they bike a lot, or maybe they do a lot of squats and lunges and they haven't been strengthening their, what I call mini muscles, but like the gluteus medius, the minimus, like all of the smaller muscles that support those efforts. How do you know if it is a result of overtraining or overusing some muscles and creating weaker muscles, like, or creating issues like the piriformis syndrome? Or is it more of a core dysfunction, or is it just both?
I would say my experience in 26 years of training is it's both for those women. It's their body's life story and journey, right? I mean, every movement that we do impacts, if you have stairs in your house and you're constantly leading and going up your stairs every single day, leading with that right foot, that's going to start to create some strength imbalances. Add on top of that, any injuries that they've had, pregnancy and those types of things where, again, muscular imbalances that if they aren't syncing and training those muscles properly to rebalance the strength, and they're then overloading, practicing that overload principle, which we teach women, that is important to, especially in our 40s and 50s, to combat osteopenia and porosis, and you're not getting those smaller muscles on board, that can definitely create inflammation because, all of those things create alignment issues, which is something that we're going to get into, right? Because the muscles are attached to the bones, and that pull on the bones makes a difference in your alignment. And for many of the women that struggle, particularly with hip and groin pain, that is due to pubic joint dysfunction, which is the pubic symphysis, the joint right at the front of the pelvis during pregnancy, with all the relaxin in your system and whatnot. Just like the belly expands, and that core dysfunction can also be from a diastasis recti or an abdominal separation that hasn't come back together. Same with the pubic joint. All of those hormones that relaxin in the system can create dysfunction at that joint. You've got pelvic floor weakness, right? Pelvic floor is what holds our guts in. And then you've got pubic joint dysfunction. You're kind of like this little, I liken it to a marionette puppet, right? It's like there's zero stability. So then, and you'll, as a trainer, you just watch that dysfunction in someone's movement pattern, right? All of a sudden, the foot collapses on one side and the knee loses the stability, and then it translates to the hip and then the shoulder and then the neck. So, sometimes when we're working with these women, you can see the dysfunction from the feet all the way up to the head. The beauty is, if that is what some of your listeners are dealing with, by addressing it at the center of gravity, it has this beautiful trickle up and trickle down effect to create more stability. Then we can create more mobility and strength. It's just this beautiful thing that we get to watch and help facilitate, because it's life-changing.
I love everything that you said about that, because it's all so interconnected. And, I grew up really separating a lot of different things. I separated my head from the rest of my body and not even taking into consideration, where my emotions were, how my mental health was, and just deciding, oh, well, I'm just going to check that at the door and, bang this out. And well, no, that's something I'm learning that is so interconnected. And I love how you talk about, addressing it from the center of gravity. Now, a lot of my community is, women in their like 40s and 50s. So baby carrying and delivering time was, for a lot of us, a while ago.
Sure.
But what you're talking, and so I want to clarify one thing. All of the symptoms and the issues caused by carrying a baby, the issues as a result of that can happen whether or not you've had that baby vaginally or through a C-section. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And that includes the pelvic floor pieces, because I talk to them about this all the time. Just because no matter which way the baby came out, your body carried and maintained a full-term pregnancy, which means you had all the joint stretching, all the tissue stretching, all the biomechanical weight shift changes to carry that pregnancy to full term. And it doesn't matter how long ago it was. Okay. It becomes a block in the chain of the story of your body's journey. Okay. And if you never had something to hop on board and help you teach those muscles to refire synchronously again together functionally, then the discomforts and the issues are only going to continue to kind of creep up, get worse, continue to haunt you. And no matter how long it was since you had a kid, that's just a part of your body's story at that point.
Well, I was going to say, particularly like many of the women that we've worked with are in their 50s, where they are in that midlife change of losing estrogen and having some of those changes happen in their body along with osteopenia. And it just becomes this perfect storm of now all these little things that were like, I call them little pebbles from God, like, hey, you might want to check in on this, that check engine light is coming on, but you're just, nothing's really wrong. You just keep on going down the road, right? Well, now it's like, the car is now sputtering because like this needs your attention right now. Yeah. It doesn't just happen that way overnight, right? It's these little things that just they compound onto one another until it's like, you need to address this.
Oh, I totally hear you. Yeah. It's like the little tap on the shoulder that turns into a punch in the throat. Like,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that happens in their 50s, in our 50s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So even, one thing, can you define osteopenia just for the listeners? And then also for women in their 40s and 50s, what kinds of things should they be paying attention to that might be a little tap on the shoulder, or maybe it's more of a, hey, something a little harder that they should be paying attention to that might indicate that they need to focus on developing a more functional core along with that, the pelvic floor. And this is more than just sit-ups. I don't know what y'all are going to say, but I'm pretty sure you're going to say this is more than crunches and sit-ups.
We do not teach crunches and sit-ups.
Yeah. I don't really do them a lot either with my clients. But anyway, so talk to us about some of the symptoms that my community should be looking for that are indicators that they've got a deeper issue in the kinetic chain, like what you were talking about.
Do you want to address the osteopenia?
Yeah, to go back to your original question about what is osteopenia also. It's the beginning stages of osteoporosis.
Got it.
It means you're starting to have some significant discernible bone loss, but it's not to the stage of being diagnosable as osteoporosis yet.
Okay.
But you're on the road there. And unless you do something to intervene, like weight-bearing activity, like getting your gut checked, because many women think, oh, I'm taking calcium, I'm taking magnesium. But if you've got gut issues, your body's not able to absorb those things. So you're basically flushing money down the toilet, as I like to tell a lot of my ladies. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that your body's able to absorb that, and you have to make change. Osteopenia is that check engine light that you don't want to ignore, because it will continue to progress to osteoporosis. And most women, no surprise, end up with that in their hip and pelvis, in their center of gravity. That's typically where this starts.
And so what are those other little check engine light warnings? And they are things that we already began discussing. If you are noticing a worsening progression of that discomfort in your back or hip, or it's suddenly turning into something more kind of serious and diagnosable, like sciatica, like piriformis syndrome, if those things are maybe going away and then coming back and then slowly getting worse, and that same goes for the bowel and the bladder pieces. If, maybe a lot of women say, well, I don't really have it that bad. It's just a few little leaks, only when my bladder's full and only when I forget to pee before exercise class. But then that turns into, now I'm rushing to the bathroom. Now I'm planning my day around where the next restroom is. Now I'm having more frequent, more serious leaks. Now I'm losing control over some gas. Now I'm not sure if I'm fully emptying my bladder, or I'm getting chronic UTIs. Or now I'm not sure if I feel like I'm straining all the time to poop, but I know I'm not constipated. There are so many nuances of all of this stuff slowly getting worse, and it's your body asking for a reset.
Got it.
And I'll add to that, Amy, with regards to back and hip warning signs. Maybe you used to be able to sit crisscross applesauce on the floor, and you notice you're no longer able to do that. Or you start noticing when you're going to put your socks and shoes on, getting your ankle onto your knee is now a challenge, right? So you've lost some mobility, you've got stiffness in those joints, and you notice that this is progressively starting to get worse. Maybe you wouldn't quantify that as pain per se, but you're noticing some quality of life stuff start to creep up that, I used to do this activity, but now I'm going to switch from doing the elliptical to just doing walking. And I'm going to switch from doing my yoga class. I'm noticing I just don't have that mobility anymore, to now I'm going to try bar. We call that, like, ladies start to method hop, right, into different types of exercise, because they start noticing, hey, I started getting injuries doing this thing that I used to do.
Got it.
Those are all warning signs.
So as you're talking, one question I have is, we talked that a lot of times the genesis of this is carrying children and, pregnancy, but I have to imagine that this is something that affects men too.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Because in here we can talk about sedentary lifestyles. That's like a thing we're all talking about now, but how much are we all sitting? Our bodies are not functionally our core, our hip, our back is not active when we're just sitting all day. And that applies to men very much as well as women, where the stability muscles at the center of gravity just start to be like, well, you don't need me. I'm going to kick off for the day, let the hip flexors do all the work, and then you can end up in all kind of pain.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Yeah. Cause as you were talking about that, I thought, this is the other thing that I've learned. You were talking about about the gut. I had a functional medicine doctor on a couple times, Dr. Richard Harris, and he was talking about the gut microbiome. And he and I talked offline one time, and he said, oh yeah, he goes, most of the time it's women listen to my show and then they go back and tell their husbands what the issue is. Yeah. So if you're listening, you're like, this is my husband, then maybe we can take this information, even if you're not having this challenge, take this information back to our husbands and help improve their quality of life as well. People are listening and they're like, you know what? Wow, either I need help with this, or, a loved one in my life needs help with this. Where do we go? What do we start doing? Tell us
there
what
are
to do.
so many productive, meaningful steps you can take to start to change this story in your life.
The first would be to head over to our website and take the 5-minute quiz that we have. That really gets some light bulbs turned on for a lot of ladies, because it does help them connect the dots between the back and hip to the bowel and bladder function, as well as how this impacts your intimate life with your spouse or your partner. So that would be one. And it lets them know, are they even a good fit for our signature program and what we offer? We have some freebies that are incredibly helpful. One is our 90-90 decompression. This is a back and hip relief technique that you can do 5 minutes a day. We have gotten feedback from women who have just done that technique and are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This was like a game changer. The other thing we like to recommend to women who maybe think that they have that pubic joint dysfunction or alignment issues, we teach women how to check their alignment in our program, getting to themselves to a Webster certified chiropractor. That is someone who is trained to be able to adjust that pubic joint. And then any women who, look, we've worked with women in their 50s and 60s who still have an abdominal separation from their last pregnancy that has never healed. And so we do offer a DR check and a closure technique as well in our Instagram bio.
And DR is diastasis recti.
Diastasis recti, yes.
I can never say it right.
That separation of your abdominals.
Got it. Okay, so you opened the door to this, and I'm going to go through it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not afraid to talk about hard things most of the time. Intimacy in your intimate life.
Yes.
Share with us some of the challenges that we may be having in our intimacy that might be a result of the poor pelvic floor health, out of everything that we're talking about, what might be some of those check engine lights in that scenario?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is a little bit nuanced, and we have lived it ourselves and worked with so many women who have, so we can get into the nitty gritty and describe what it does feel like. Jen lives with stage 2 prolapse of all compartments, which means just kind of pelvic floor dysfunction progressed. It's the organs kind of trying to fall out. And that's how we created the signature program that we offer. And I have a rectocele and had a couple babies. And what this feels like is a little bit different for each woman. It can be pain on penetration. So it can be pain with insertion, but it can be very different from that as well. It can be soreness and swelling and discomfort in the general region afterwards. Maybe you had no discomfort during, but you notice like, God, I feel so puffy down there afterwards. It can also feel like almost like higher up abdominal discomfort, like during
intercourse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe it has nothing to do with the penetration or the insertion. It's more like somebody's punching you from the inside.
Well, and to be clear, because I know your listeners, many of them are menopausal women. And obviously during menopause, many women do experience pain upon insertion. That can be due to vaginal dryness, as well as the loss of estrogen changes the tissue down there. So that is separate from what we're discussing. Most of the women, maybe it's kind of screaming louder with the onset of menopause. But if they noticed any of these symptoms pre-menopause that we're discussing, the pain upon insertion will be more pronounced during menopause. And there is a cream that we recommend to our ladies who are menopausal. It's called Oxycell. It's a natural cream that you can use as a lubricant to help. Okay. Oxycell.
Yeah, is that over the counter?
Yes.
Yeah. This stuff can be complex. And like you said, especially with the onset of menopause. But when it is that pain with insertion or penetration prior to the kind of moisture changes down there with menopause, it's usually it's a pelvic floor thing for sure. And it's usually an over tight pelvic floor, which is very common amongst highly active women.
Or women who have been thinking they've been doing themselves a favor by doing their kegels.
Which is not actually.
Talk to me about the Kegel thing, because when I had babies, which was 16 and 18 years ago, like that was the thing, like do your Kegels, do your Kegels, do your Kegels. And I've been hearing, so you're the second, I had a really great trainer down in New Zealand who has a program on, and we talked about similar but different things. And she was like, no, it's not always the Kegels, if I'm remembering that conversation correctly. So talk to me some about that. Like, is this outdated information? Is it something that maybe doesn't apply to everything?
It is completely the wrong way to approach re-strengthening the pelvic floor. And Jen has a wonderful analogy to illustrate that. It's been recommended for so long because nobody had figured out a better way, quite frankly. That was all that anybody knew to do. So they were saying to do it. Okay, great. When you know better, you do better. And that is what we have found. And the analogy is so
we
wonderful.
Did a whole video on this on our YouTube page, like your pelvic floor is not a magical unicorn. And we say that because that's how it's been treated with Kegels. Like our pelvic floor is skeletal muscle mass, just like your bicep. And it functions the same way, right? As we move, as you step forward, squat, lunge, it's dynamic. It's not like our deep abdominals work where they're either on or off. These are dynamic muscular contractions that are happening. And so it would be like, as a personal trainer, somebody comes to you and they're like, I just got this job and like, I have to lift all this heavy stuff. And like, I just feel like my biceps are really, really weak. Can you help me with this? And you're like, okay, great. Like, here's this 10-pound dumbbell, bend your elbow at 90 degrees and just squeeze as tight as you can. And just keep doing that. Now, are they going to get stronger at that 90-degree bend? For sure, that isometric contraction. But does it help them get it from 0 to 90 degrees? No. Does it help them get it from 90 to 180? No. So it's not functional.
Yeah.
Right.
And does it help actually lift the box and put it over?
Not
your
at all.
head? Yeah.
Now, for women, I will say this, there is a caveat with Kegels, and that is I had birth injuries after I had my first son where I was completely incontinent both ways for several weeks. So I needed to get some women's health PT to even just get a little spark going to get those puppies to turn on, right? So you better believe I was kegling my little heart out anytime that I had to cough, sneeze, or do anything because I had no muscle control down there. That's appropriate. And the same could be said for, women's health, penetrating in that way to get that spark going. But then that's the nudge that the body needs to then take over that process, right?
Such an extreme situation.
Correct. Yeah. But that being said, it is a situation where Kegels would be appropriate. And we don't, we always like to say we're not poo-pooing on, no pun intended. We're not poo-pooing on those.
You intended that pun.
It's just when you know better, you do better.
Okay.
And our pelvic floor never works independently. Yeah. It's a pressure balance system. So it's working in coordination with the diaphragm and the deep abdominals, the back extensors, the glutes and the hip rotators, they all work together. And so we need to train them together.
And do we has anybody before having any pelvic floor problems remember having to think about squeezing it to stop the pee from coming out when you sneeze or laugh? Is that how it worked before it was broken? Absolutely not. And it shouldn't be that way once it's healed and recovered again. It should be absolutely subconscious. And there is a way now to get it to work that way again through all ranges of motion. No matter what happens, you don't have to think about it anymore.
Well, that makes so much sense. I mean, you are definitely speaking my language. It's funny, Jen, you're talking about the biceps. I will tell my clients, I rarely just have people do bicep curls. I'm like, these are vanity muscles and they are getting work when we're doing everything else. But functionally, I want you to function well. I want you to be able to do the things that you want to do. And just having great biceps is not going, I mean, it can help like you were talking about, but it's not the answer to everything. And so putting everything in, it's those push, pull, squat, hinge, rotational, a single leg, like all of those, putting all of that together is really what makes us strong overall and function well,
in
not
life.
just
Yes.
isolating those specific muscles. That's fine if you're a bodybuilder and you're getting on stage in a bikini, but I'm not.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to be able to move my groceries and, enjoy my life and hike with my family and not have to worry about any of these issues. And so I'm a total nerd for function. That is sexy to me.
Yes. To both of us. That's part of our problem. We like to talk about the function way more than the sexy part. We're going to be like, yeah, your booty gets perkier.
Well, that's the other thing.
Your abs get flatter.
And the other piece about the conversation about intimacy that I've forgotten to mention, that many women come back to us and sneak in a comment in a private fashion via an email or a direct message on social media. And they say, I can't believe you didn't tell me that my orgasms were going to be better again, that I was going to have more sensation again in my intimate life. And I can't believe I had been missing this for this long. And that is fixed along with the pee problems and my back and hip. And it's incredible. And it's changed my life.
Wow. That's great. I'm really glad you said that. Tell me about the relationship between getting up in the middle of the night to pee. Cause I mean, every night almost if I pull an all-nighter, that means I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night to pee. Like I will tell my people, I'm like, I had an all-nighter. This is great. So what's the relationship with that?
You can say goodbye to that for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of women, whether you're diagnosed or not, with prolapse issues, often you end up getting up to pee when you shift positions. And because of that lack of tonicity, right, the ligaments that hold the organs up, there is more wiggle room there, and it kind of sets off the nerve of, okay, you have to pee. When you begin to strengthen these muscles and you've got more support down there and you're completely emptying your bladder the last time you pee before you go to bed, it's like magic.
It is like magic.
Get comments all the time.
That and the sex life are the things that most women send us these overly, unbelievably excited messages, because it's the things they didn't expect to happen. They almost didn't believe it was possible. So they're delighted that they're not leaking pee anymore, but they're even more excited about the stuff they didn't think was possible. Like, I cannot believe I'm not getting up to pee anymore. You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
And the intimate life with my husband is exponentially improved. I can't believe this. Thank you so much. Because they truly did not think it was possible.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. Okay. So tell us some about your program, the Tighten Your Tinkler program, because it sounds like this is a comprehensive program that whether or not you are getting up in the middle of the night to pee, or, possibly having intimacy issues related to pelvic floor health or back and hip pain, that this will holistically address a lot of those issues, because just like we talked about at the beginning, everything is related. Tell us what that program entails, and what the expectations are, because this is the other thing I know about my community, and probably about yours too. We have very full lives. We have a lot on our plate. And and I know that this isn't it, so this is why I know I can say it, but like to say that we need to spend 2 hours working on our pelvic floor health, it ain't going to happen.
No.
So what would if we were to sign up, what would we expect?
Carol, we have dialed it down to as simple and clear and direct and effective as you possibly could. It is a 10-minute routine. Perfect. It takes 10 minutes a day.
Okay. 5 days a week, because we're
Saturdays and Sundays are off.
Friday. Yeah. I mean, truly. And we give recovery tools, because we know that women who generally come to us, number one, they have a belief that healing is possible. They have a holistic mindset. They are open to the idea of their bodies being given the right nudge and taking this forward.
The exercises are what everybody's most excited about. It is a 10-minute movement, whole body movement series in which you are not taking your clothes off. You can do it in your living room in front of your kids. Mine like to play along and do it too, with your spouse or friends present. And we don't just include the exercises though. That's the part everybody's excited about. But we also teach you, we arm you with, you strap on this set of tools that you can draw on for the rest of your life. And as you learn the exercises that take care of the discomforts along the way. So you're arming yourself with kind of self-treatment, self-care tools, techniques, positions, stretches, recommendations that holistically approach this whole process, this reset at your center of gravity, and directly support that 10-minute a day exercise routine. And women find that some of them need more of those kind of treatment recovery tools. Some need less. Some need them more at the beginning as they're really getting that reset of the foundational functional strength back. And then they only need them kind of as needed. Well, I did something out of my normal routine. I went and tried to play tennis this week, and I haven't done that in 7 years. Yeah, my back was a little tighter, but you know what? I just pulled out that tool that worked, 2 months ago when I started, and I felt better. And then it didn't linger. I didn't have it the next day. I felt like 100% 2 hours later. It was awesome. And so you get that toolbox as well as that 10-minute a day movement series so that you're empowered to move forward without being disabled by this stuff and held back.
From a mindset perspective, oftentimes we have the conversation, women come in and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this for 30 days. And then I'm going to check this off the list and be done with it. And I like to have the conversation of, we have all bought into the fact that in order to have good oral health, we should brush our teeth for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, base minimum. We understand the consequences of not doing that. And this routine can be dialed back from a maintenance perspective to 2 minutes a day. But it is something that does require consistent effort to be able to maintain the progress that they see, much like any exercise program, right? You can't get to a certain thing and then be like, okay, I exercised, I'm done. And expect that you're going to keep reaping the rewards from that, right? That makes no sense.
Yeah. That does make sense. That makes a whole lot of sense. So just in a general, because I think it's normal to want to know what kind of investment of time, the 10 minutes a day, 5 times a week, that seems very doable, very doable. How long does it take for people to start to see results? Again, with the mindset that it's a continual thing, but we can kind of adjust it after we get to the point where we're not waking up in the middle of the night to pee and maybe our back and our hip isn't hurting as much. So do you have a general timeline in terms of when we see positive results? It's such an unfair question.
No, it's not. It's an awesome question.
And it's why we did the research, because we're geeks like that. And we looked at bladder function, bowel function, closing of abdominal separations, back and hip pain. And what we saw across the board in 30 days was significant improvement in all of those symptoms. Every woman's body is unique. Yeah. What she is doing in her body every day is going to impact her results. So we do have some rules of some do's and don'ts that we recommend the first 30 days. But truly speaking, most women halfway through, if they are following the plan in place at that 14-day mark, they're feeling that their abs, some ladies are like, my abs just catch me. I just feel like they're turned on. I feel taller. I feel lighter.
And that's when we start to get those messages about I'm not waking up at night anymore. That even at 2 weeks in, we start to get the messages like, I used to get up every night 3 times. And now I got up once in the last week. It happens that fast because we're not forcing the body to do anything. We're giving it that nudge. We're going, here you go. This is all you need. Your body knows what to do. We're just going to give it that little, boop, just that.
Wow. Well, and I think that there's a lot of power to that what I think I hear you saying is like that activation and turning it on.
Yes.
A lot of our muscles have just gotten really lazy and they're like, well, the glute maxes are doing all the work. Why would I need to join in the just go along for the ride? So it's just turning it on and then they know what to do once you start reminding it to know what to do.
Yeah. Those are our pillars: alleviate the discomforts, reconnect, and then strengthen. And that's really the process that we're walking you through in those 30 days. And it is amazing. But from a concrete, we get some type A ladies who are like concrete data, like I want to know. We have a bladder and a bowel diary in there. And we do ask that women, number one, take our quiz so they have that concrete score before they start. They know, okay, how many times are they leaking a day? How many times are they peeing a day? If they're having, any bowel issues, they know that right off the bat. And so when they finish that 30 days, they retake the quiz. They have that concrete score of, oh gosh, yeah, this is better, right? And they know they can see documented, oh God, yeah, I was peeing like 15 times a day before, and now I'm peeing 9 times a day. Like, wow, I'm not leaking gas anymore. I'm going to go back and try that yoga class again that I was so embarrassed to be in because I was either passing gas from my rectum or sometimes air getting trapped in the vagina and having gas come out of there as well, which is awful.
I have one of my friends in 9th grade used to say, I farted through my twat.
Exactly. That is one of the messages we've gotten recently. It was one of those like overjoyed at the surprise result. And she was like, I can't believe I went to do a downward dog and no air came out. I can go back to yoga class again.
I have a friend who said when she first started doing yoga, she said, I was just trying not to pass gas the whole time. Like that was her one and only focus on this. Oh my gosh, this sounds fantastic. Tell people how they can connect with you and how they can get access to your program.
We are in all the places. If they'd like to join the program, that's at tightenertinkler.com. But we are on Instagram at tighten.your.tinkler. We have so much fun. We shoot reels. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we teach at the same time. We're also on YouTube, Tighten Your Tinkler, and Facebook as Tighten Your Tinkler. So,
and Pinterest.
Awesome. Oh gosh, this is fantastic. Okay, I have 2 more questions that I ask all of my guests. Number 1 is I am fascinated by tattoos because I have found that often when people get permanent body art, they have a story behind it or a meaning. Not always, but often. And I don't have any, but I was wondering if you all had one. You guys are laughing, so I can't wait to hear what's. If you have any, would you be meaning to share what it is and the meaning behind it? And if you don't, if you had to get one, where would it go and what would it be?
This was hilarious.
We were reading these questions
and Jen thought, why does she want to know? And I'm like, why do you care?
So I'm going to fess up. Okay. I have a tramp stamp that I got. I went to college at 17. And so when I turned 18, I had a friend of mine who had already had a bunch of tattoos and was like, what are we going to do to celebrate? Let's go get a tattoo. I'd never thought about getting a tattoo, but I'm like, yeah, let's go get a tattoo. So I was like, where can I put this tattoo that nobody's going to see it? And, at the time, Britney Spears with the tramp stamp and, the low riding jeans, and it was cool. And so I was like, oh Lord, what am I going to get? And so we're looking at all the tattoos and they're like, well, what year were you born? I was born in 77. They're like, that's the year of the snake. That's an awesome year. You should get that. I'm like, okay, I'm getting that. And that's the story of the tattoo that I completely regret. And
wait, but let's come full circle. The person who you got this tattoo with did what else in your life?
Oh, he also introduced me to my husband.
Okay, all right. Well, you could have lied. You didn't have to fess up.
Well, that's no fun.
No, it isn't any fun. No, I love it. Well, that's why I say often people have a story, but you do have a story of it, and you do have a meaningful one because you ended up meeting your husband through there. So there you go. That's fantastic. Christina, what about you? Do you have anything you want to share?
I have neither my ears pierced nor any tattoos because I do not get excited about causing voluntary pain.
Okay.
I could never convince myself the ear piercing thing was like, nope, don't really want to go sit down and let somebody hurt me for that. And then once I got old enough to not be scared of that, I realized I wasn't really an accessories girl. So why would I burden myself with more accessories? The tattoo thing, well, yeah, it's more pain. So nope, not interested. And on top of that, there was nothing I could think of that I would be okay with plastering my body with for the rest of my life. Nothing that I could think of that would meet those criteria.
Yeah, the joys of being 18 and not really fully appreciating the long-term consequences of a tramp stamp.
It's that that was not quite developed. Well, Christina, I'm with you. Like it's funny. I actually just celebrated 200 episodes of this podcast. Yay! And I know, I can't believe it. But I had my girlfriend, I kind of handed the mic over to her and I said, well, I'm going to let you interview me because, I just had this book come out. And so she asked me that at the end. And I was like, I still don't know. And I kind of made a joke at the end of the show. So people can go back and listen to that. But I did finally figure out where I would put it if I had to get one. But I'm with you, Christina. I'm like, I don't know what I would do. So I just haven't put anything. Who knows? I turned 50 in 3 years. If I can think of something between now and then, maybe that. But and then on a separate note, do you all have any meaningful Bible verses that you would like to share?
Well, mine is, I love, and I always come back to, love one another as I have loved you. Yeah. And that really embodies what we do. Our core values are respecting the dignity of each woman that comes to us and wanting to restore that for her with compassion, empathy, and love. So that's one that I reflect on quite often.
Yeah, nothing says it better.
Yeah.
It's so aligned with our personalities and what we hope, the change we hope to help create in this world.
That's beautiful. That's so true. And I love the focus on dignity because this is, depending on how you were raised, the language in your house. I mean, for some women in their 50s, the word vagina still makes them squirmy. And, I'll admit it's a word that I still have to get really comfortable with using as well. And so I love that you have that approach where it's gentle, it's dignified, it's respectful, but also helps women find quite literally the strength within to be able to function well and to live well. And so just thank you for all you did. And I so enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. This was so awesome,
Amy. We feel so honored that you have chosen us to speak with you here today.
I told you that was fun. Hey, no matter your age, if you have been experiencing some of these symptoms, please go check out the Tighten Your Tinkler program. By the way, if you have an HSA, a health savings account, the purchase of this program is eligible through that. So that really made a difference to me because that's how we do our health insurance. We have an HSA program. And so that if that makes a difference to you, then that is something that I know where they worked really hard on the back end that now we get to enjoy. If you want an honest review of my experience, head to the free Graced Health Facebook group. Link is in the show notes. I'm going to be going live on Thursday, March 3rd at 12 p.m. Central. So if you have questions, this is a wonderful, safe, private group where you can ask questions. Nothing is off limits because clearly we are not a precious crowd here. So ask your questions. I'm happy to answer them. And I'll just be sharing my experience because what I did was I went ahead and signed up for that program. And I'm excited to share what I learned and how I'm feeling and all of that kind of stuff. So make sure that you head over there. I do have a link for the Tighten Your Tinkler program in the show notes. You can sign up through it there. And again, make sure you listen to the Facebook Live on Thursday, March 3rd. If you are listening to this past March 3rd, no worries. It'll stay up there for a minimum of 30 days, maybe after that. Now, if you found value in today's show, here are 3 simple things that would be valuable to me. Number 1, rate and review this podcast. I know it can be confusing, especially on Apple. So I've got a link in there. You can just click on the show notes, leave a review, super simple, like one sentence. One sentence is really valuable to me. Number 2, sign up to receive my monthly journals. This is a subscriber-only space for me to share things that I love, and I think you will too. I get a lot of really great feedback from them, and I would love to get this in your inbox. You cannot find it on the web. It is subscriber only because I just want to keep it more of a sacred space. So make sure you sign up for that. And then finally, if you have not yet, purchase a copy of my book, Your Worthy Body. Like I said, this is not a diet book. It's a cross-cultural, grace-filled look at how to change your mindset and how you feel about your body and your eating and your movement. And it's all through a lens of faith. I'm really proud of it. And I want you to have it. And I want you and your book club or your Bible study group to be doing it as well. In each episode, I try to leave you with one simple thing to remember, because we cover a lot of ground in these episodes, especially today. So today's one simple thing is just a really broad one, and that is your pelvic floor is not just one muscle that needs strengthening, and it may be the root of other issues you hadn't considered, even if you carried babies, gave birth to babies years and years ago. So if you are experiencing any of these, check out the free resources Jenna and Christina offer. Again, go check them out. They offer a lot of great things online and their socials. And then enroll in the Your Tinkler program. I promise you will not regret it. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.